Hi everyone and welcome to my channel, and today to my studio where I'm about to do something that you might find interesting. I need to fit a pastel painting to an old frame that I've got. And if you're just starting out as an artist and your framing budget is limited, this might be a great way to present your pastels. If you enjoy this, then please do subscribe to me here on YouTube. I also have lots more video tutorials on my Patreon channel, where for a small monthly subscription you'll gain access to my full library of tutorials. So I have this painting that I did as a demo for The Artist magazine, but it was a friend's dog that I photographed for this. So it's the perfect opportunity to gift this painting to her. I offered to frame it for her as I know that she likes to collect old frames from thrift shops, and I knew that she would have something that I could make work for this. And this is the frame that I chose that I thought would really suit this piece. It has a nice ornate thing going on, and some of the gold is even a little bit tarnished to more of a copper colour like in the dog. My plan for this is to cut a single mount and create a space between that and the painting, so almost a floating mount with a gap. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do that with this frame, if it's deep enough, so I'll know better when I open up the frame and have a look. But I'm going to film the whole process. I thought you'd find this interesting, so let's make a start. It's not entirely straightforward as the proportions are slightly different, but I think I can make it work with a freshly cut mount. And I'm going to make a trial mount just to see how it will look and make sure that I get my measurements correct, as I only have one cream sheet of board and I can't mess that up. So the first thing I'll do now is clean this frame up a little bit because it's covered in dust, and open it up and see what we've got. So as you can see here, we've actually got a double frame. That's how this is put together. So there's one frame inside the outer frame. It's literally stapled or nailed into this, but it seems pretty firm. And once I tape over the whole thing again, that should be fine. What I need to remove is this central bit here. So I need to remove these little nails and get the picture that's already in here out. So that's the little piece of backing board that's in there. I'll see if that's something I want to reuse. I may well cut a fresh one for that. And then we've got the little mount and the print on the next layer, and then the glass. So at this stage I can see the thickness of the rebate here. It's going to be tricky to leave a space between the mount and the painting, but let's give it a go. So when I take the existing mount that was in the print and hold that around the piece, you can see that it's nowhere near the right dimensions. The width of it actually is pretty good. I think I can make the sides the same width as this, but of course I'm going to have to make a deeper mount at the top and the bottom, and it's whether I make those sections even or whether I make a slightly deeper one at the bottom. So that's why I want to make a trial run just to see how that works. So this is my mount cutter. It's pretty old, it has seen a lot of action, but it's very basic, and it just comprises of this base board, which has seen a lot of action and probably could be replaced. And then along that we've got a ruler with lots of fractions. This is actually in inches and fractions, it's so old. And then this main ruler, which has two sets of measurements as well. So by setting the measurements in the correct place along the ruler, you can choose different breadths of mount. So I'll show you very quickly. This is the practice mount that I cut. And I'll just quickly show you how that fits the picture, because it does actually fit the picture. So I'm going to show you now with the proper colour of mount that I want to use, but this is just my practice run to check that my measurements are good. So to figure out the dimensions of the mount, all I did was take the existing mount that I took out of the frame and placed it over the picture. I can see that this width on either side of the painting is almost perfect, so I just measured what that actually is. I've got to measure in inches because my mount cutter is all in inches, so this is very close to 2¼ inches on either side, so that measurement is good already. Then to figure out the top and bottom, I simply just placed the ruler here. I thought that I wanted to perhaps make the bottom a little bit deeper, so I slide this down to 4 just to see what that might look like, and then I measure the top, which 3½ inches will get me just within the blue area. So you don't want to cut it very neat to the edge of your painting. You'd like it to come in like 1 millimeter or 2 over the edge of your painting, which is why you should always put your signature just a little bit in from the edges so that you don't get that lost in the framing. So just to make it nice and clear for myself, we've got our outer dimensions of the sheet. Weirdly, I've measured this in centimetres because that's what it was, very exactly 40 centimetres by 50 centimetres. That's just the size it was cut. Clearly whoever cut this mount originally worked in centimetres because everything worked out perfectly, but my mount cutter is in inches, so I need inches for this. I'm going to melt your heads and I'm going to mix metric system with inches, but that is just what I do to myself when I'm doing these things, unfortunately. So the either side dimensions are 2¼ inches. Here is 4 inches, and here is 3½ inches. So let's cut the real mount for the piece. So that's the board cut to the same outer dimensions as before. I'm going to show you how the mount cutter works. So let's mark out the mount on the back of our mount board. So the first dimension, which was for the left and right side of the painting, was 2¼ inches. So I want to find the 2 on here, and then 1/4 along this. And I match those up on both sides. So I can use that now to mark out the left and right sides. I take my mount board and I put it face down in the mount cutter. This is the cream side, the side that I want for the outer part of the mount. So I put it face down and I do the drawing out on the back. So I just take a pencil, make sure that I hold the ruler, make sure that the mount board is nice and tight to the edge of the back metal here. And then I run my pencil down that. And I can do the other side, the opposite side too, because it's also 2¼ inches. So I just give myself a light line down the back. Now the next dimension, the base of the mount is 4 inches. So I need to set it to 4, which is here on the ruler, and to the first setting here. So you can adjust the width of the mount that you're going to cut by quite a small degree just by using these two rulers. So now I want this line to overlap with these side lines that I've already created. That corner is what I'm really looking for. That's the information that I need to tell me how far to cut. And then the last one is 3.5, so we've got halves along here as well, so I just have to move this in 1 notch. And you can see the difference that makes between the 4-inch line that I've just added. So that is the box that I want to cut out. Then the last part of my mount cutter is this little blade, which has a lever like this. So my mount cutter is really basic, but for something so basic, it still does a great job. So you want to line up the little line. I don't know if I can show you on the camera. There's a little mark on the blade. And what I'm doing here is lining that line up with the line that I've just added. So I click it in close to the ruler. I line those lines up. Then I push the blade down. Make sure I'm holding the ruler nice and firm. And I glide it along nice and smooth, hopefully, until the little line meets the next line that I've drawn. So you want to get right into the corner, but not to overlap that line too much, because then you'll see that little cut that you sometimes see on the front of mounts. So let's cut the two sides. We need to remember to move back into 2.25 inches. Again, ruler nice and tight, mount nice and tight in, line up the little lines, make sure I hold the ruler nice and close, and try to do it with a nice smooth action. So I can cut the opposite side now, because it's also 2.25 inches. And then the final one, 4 inches for the bottom. And if you've cut it nicely, it should just pop right out, and then you're left with the finished mount. So now I have the mount or the mat cut, and to create the spacer I cut a piece of foam board to the same as the outer dimensions, and then I cut this window, which is just a little bit bigger than this window, so I don't have to be too fussy about this. I don't use the mount cutter, just done with a scalpel. Then what I would want to do is put this in between, and then that creates a nice space between the mount and the painting. But I'm not sure that this depth of material is actually going to fit in the frame, so let's try and fit it in the frame and see how it looks. So the rebate of a frame is basically the depth from here to the glass, so how thick your painting is will really depend on how much space you've got in the rebate. So really, when I look at the thickness of this rebate here, I don't think I'm going to have enough space to fit that 5mm foam board, extra board in there on top of the backing board, the painting and the little mount. So I have it laid out here how it's going to look. I'm not going to have the space between the mount and the painting, but that's fine, it's still going to look lovely. So I'm going to tape this together and then fit it in the frame. So that's a nice neat fit in the frame. And we're almost ready to seal it all up at the back. So I'll take it apart again and give the glass a good clean on the inside, make sure I've got all the dust out, and then I can clean the outside of the glass as well and get it all taped up. So now I have everything fitted in the frame, I need to seal it up at the back. And for this I recommend putting something soft down to cushion the frame on the front. And in this case I'm using some very simple framing nails, and I'm very gently hammering those into the wood and then bending them over the backing board. This is a pretty old school way to do this, it's how framing was done in the past, and it still works fine. I actually do own something called a brad gun. I just couldn't find it when I was doing this, but that shoots out the little bendy metal things that you find on more modern frames. But I always have some of these little metal framing nails as well, so that's perfectly fine. Then this is the frame sealing tape that I mentioned earlier. I use that to tape up the back of the frame, and then I'm also making use of a high-tack brown tape for this, just to finish off around the edge. So I have got one tape that's a proper framing tape, and then sometimes I also make do with other tapes that I have. As long as it's not touching the work itself, then I'm not too worried if it's not 100% archival, but I do try to use materials that are archival so that the piece will be preserved for many years. So the final thing is to make it hangable on the wall, and I add these little metal brackets with very short little screws. And I normally put this just under a third of the way down the frame. And the final thing will be to add a picture cord. So it's a fiddly job, but I quite enjoy the process. So now the piece is ready to hang. What do you think? I'll add the links to all of the materials that I've used to do this. It certainly works out cheaper than paying for professional framing, but there's a lot of intricate work and it takes a lot of time and effort to do it. And obviously cutting mounts comes with an initial outlay cost. But I quite like having the option to do this, and I enjoy measuring things out and getting stuck in. So if that appeals to you, then maybe a mount cutter would be a nice investment. I hope that my friend likes her piece and how it looks in her recycled frame. And if you find this helpful here, then please do subscribe to me here on YouTube. And if you want to see lots more how-to videos like this, then check out all my other playlists here on YouTube. And then if you'd like even more pastel tuition, do visit me on my Patreon channel, where you can access my full library of real-time tutorials and lots more. And you can of course now browse these tutorials on my website emmacolbertart.com. But thanks very much for watching this here, and until next time, happy pasteling.